I'm Keren, married to Daniel Boltzer, who's very outgoing, so probably a lot of people have met him at church over the years. Uh, we've been members of Apostles for, well, longer than we really can remember. But before we had kids, and we have Basil, who's 10, Milo's 8, and we have a new baby who's 6 months, Ella Ruth. Um, and we've been in the city since 2002 when I went to NYU for a French studies program to do a master's and have been here ever since. Right after I talked to you and told you I would be happy to be on this, I didn't realize that we were going to have Milo in the hospital for a week, and it's interesting how it really came into the conversation we were first having about, I thought I was going to be talking kind of about the whole last year because there were so many unexpected things that happened last year with the pandemic. Finding out I was pregnant in January and then coming home from the office in March, Daniel getting COVID, being very sick for months, Basil getting COVID, having a temperature for 6 months, and the doctor saying, just good luck. And then he had to end up going to the ER. When Ella Ruth was 3 weeks old, she was dropped and had to go to the ER. And so I kind of thought my whole conversation would be kind of centered around that of it was a crazy year and God got us through, which he did and he does. But this week I've really been reflecting on what this whole last year has been and how we create idols we don't really know we've created. And for me, that has been safety and peace in the midst of turmoil. I know we're not promised, the Bible says we're not promised an easy life. We're promised that God will be with us through it. But I always kind of felt like, but he really means for me to feel safe. He really means for me to have an abundant life that means that it's peaceful and not so full of suffering or hardship. And this last week, so very briefly, Milo went into the hospital because we went up to my brother's to house sit for the weekend 2 Fridays ago. Thinking it was going to be a quiet weekend away, which nothing with our boys was quiet, but it's supposed to be restful. And Milo, without my knowing, that afternoon ate part of a rhubarb leaf out of the garden, thinking it was lettuce, and rhubarb leaves are toxic. And so I found this out at 2 a.m. Saturday morning when he was throwing up in the bed, not knowing why he was sick. And he said, "I ate something, Mom." And I thought, oh, well, this is bad, but we'll fix it. Not a big deal. And ended up having to take him to urgent care up there in Westchester Saturday afternoon. They gave him an IV and kind of got him feeling better. And so he came home. We drove back home on Sunday and he got sick again. And so our doctor said, call poison control. So we did. And they said, you need to take him back to the ER. So Monday we took him back and they did the same thing, gave him an IV and said, we think, he didn't eat enough. It shouldn't really be poisoning his system. He should be fine. By 2 a.m. on Tuesday morning, he was very, very sick. He had been throwing up every hour. And when I checked on him, because he was on the couch and Daniel was on the other couch, but I went down to check on him at 2 a.m. and he was so weak, he was whispering for the bowl, but he couldn't sit up to get it. And I got scared. And I said, Daniel, he's really not okay. And so we immediately decided to take him back to the ER. And they admitted him saying, well, this doesn't make sense. We don't know what's wrong. He didn't eat enough of the leaf to really be toxic, but maybe he did for his size because he's a little guy. He's 8 and he was 54 pounds. And so they admitted him and eventually decided that he had an underlying condition of like gastrointestinal problems, like GERD or something, where he essentially never stopped throwing up in the hospital for days. and he lost a ton of weight. He was scared. He's still a little scary to look at. We're still trying to get him healthy and strong. And but we finally got to bring him home last Saturday morning. And so he's been home a week, just recovering and eating really gentle foods and on a couple medications. And so they think they figured it out. But it was the first time, I'll probably tear up a little bit because it's been pretty recent, but the first time I thought I actually could lose one of them, lose one of my own. With Milo, I couldn't keep him safe at home. I didn't know what to do. I still feel a little bit scared about him because he's lost so much weight and he's so light, and he's tired. He's not his normal crazy self, doing parkour off of every piece of furniture and driving us crazy. He'll wrap up in a blanket and lay on the couch with this enormous stuffed bunny I got him for being so brave in the hospital for a week. I realized I didn't feel safe anymore. It was the first time, even with my chronic migraines, and Basil has chronic migraines, that I really was faced with a health crisis for a child that I didn't have the power, the tools to solve by saying, I'm going to pray for you and we're going to be okay. I didn't know if we were going to be okay. And I was just praying this week about how safety has been that thing I have felt from the Lord so much through the years, partly because we always pull through whatever hard thing comes. Mm-hmm. So I went back to my journal and I was reading about, I'd written the week after Ella was dropped, how grateful I was that the Lord was really taking care of our family, and I just heard him say, I'm hiding you in the cleft of a rock, in the shelter of my wings. And I had this image of being high up in this like cliff space with this storm raging out there. And for me, it was the pandemic and work and kids and a new baby, all these things, and having these enormous wings cover the whole opening and feeling safe and warm inside. And I remembered that this week with Milo, that image of, that's where my safety is. It has to be there because there are things that are going to come that I simply don't have the ability to protect my own from. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to hold your own life and your own suffering and your own issues in your hands and say, well, Lord, help me take care of me. It's another when they're a part of you but separate from you, and you've got to release them into the Lord's hands, knowing that things can happen that will be completely outside of your control. And I wanted to read something that is the thing that, I go back to. It's a prayer out of the Valley of Vision. I go back to, the line reads, if my life is to be a crucible amid burning heat, so be it. But do thou sit at the furnace mouth to watch the ore, that nothing be lost. And I think that is, I came back to it again this week with Milo. If there are going to be things in this life amidst the joys and the wonderful things, the laughter and family and love and vacations and celebrations, if suffering is going to be woven through a life, I want to know it's refining me. I want to know that it's being refined in me so I can teach it to my kids, so that it can enhance my marriage. It can make me wise for my sister when she is asking about parenting and marriage and the things she's going through, or friends, or conversations that are hard with my parents, or whatever it might be, or how I'm praying for an issue I can't iron out at work. If God's going to allow the refining, I want to know he's sitting right there, making sure that it's all going to be used for good. And he promises that.
Yeah.
But this is, I guess, what I sink my nails into when something unexpected happens that, you know, pulls me to my knees again. This last week has really shown me again how deep my need is for Christ. If I were to have the worst thing happen, which would be to lose one of these of my own,
Yeah.
my safety will only ever be in his hands because I simply don't have the power to keep us safe. And I don't know if I knew how much I relied on that or demanded that of him. You
Mm.
know, I want peace in my home and I want to be safe. You need to make us safe.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's okay to pray for those things, but demanding that as part of the give and take with God of this is how I'm going to believe in you or trust in you or believe that you're good is
Mm.
if you then give me, you know, it's a transactional, and it simply has to be a giving over of yourself to him to say you are God and I am not,
Mhm.
and I have to believe that you are worthy to be trusted, and therefore when you say I'll never leave you or forsake you, or you say um, it's for freedom that Christ has set us free, you mean it to be bigger than what I can provide for myself.
Mm.
And therefore it has to be in your hands on your terms, and it's no longer transactional. So if it looks unsafe here, you're still not lying when you say I am safe anyway,
Mhm.
despite what's happened.